Hello, and welcome back to Season 2, Episode 127 of Paranormal NL Podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Pocket Cast and YouTube. I'm your host, Jen. For tonight's show, let's give a shout out to the Paranormal NL Podcast Alumni-Network member who recommended tonight's guest. That's a big shout out to Mark Elliott Fults, who was on PNL Podcast Season 2, Episode 112. And let's give more hugs again to those people in the USA dealing with the aftermath of that Hurricane Helene. Now it's time to pull up your cozy chair and grab your pumpkin spice beverage and listen in to your favorite podcast. Paranormal NL Podcast is a place where the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada, and anywhere else in the world can share their paranormal experiences. PNL Podcast also believes in supporting people, places, and things to promote paranormal tourism and paranormal networking all over the world. A big thank you again to all the PNL Podcast alumni guests from Season 1 and 2, and of course, our fans. We want to hear your stories. Do you have any paranormal, metaphysical, UFO, cryptid creature, folklore, historical books, or just tales of the weird you'd like to share as a guest on my PNL Podcast? Please reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or Gmail at paranormal.nl.podcast@gmail.com. After your episode, you'll become part of the PNL Podcast Alumni-Network. And make sure you click on the bell and like and subscribe and follow along on whatever platform you're listening in on to get updates for new episodes. And head on over to Facebook and join our Paranormal NL Podcast group. It's the official place to hang out in a fun, safe space and find upcoming new PNL episodes in the featured section of the group. And we're listening to our fans. PNL Podcast now has a Facebook page for fans who are not on Instagram for Instagram reel drops and a spot for the PNL Bog team. That's right, it's a boots-on-the-ground paranormal investigation team doing local historical investigations in Newfoundland. Our fans asked us, and Paranormal NL Podcast and the new PNL Bog Team merch are now available on TeePublic. But I'm also maybe thinking about bringing in some stuff maybe from Vistaprint with some books with some of the logos on there and some other stuff like pens and all that. Now, let's just get on with the show because I don't like to talk about stuff like that. Let's go ahead and bring on the stage with me on StreamYard tonight from North Texas. I've got Teal Gray. Welcome, Teal.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Now, Teal, she is a mixed bag here. She's an author, sacred site traveler, podcaster. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Teal.
Well, thank you. I write a mix of things from books delving into the sacred, what makes a place sacred, what makes it particularly haunted or have some negative things there. And there's a book coming out that I'm doing on that called Sacred Derkos, which is just, of course, sacred spelled backwards. And, it deals with the thought of, is this possibly brought on with ley lines, with, what makes a place sacred? Because it goes on for such a long time, centuries. Places are visited for the feeling of being healed or something holy or wonderful miracles happening in somebody's life. At the same token, there are places that have long histories of nothing but tragedy and death and just terrible things happening on that spot. And it always made me wonder why, why is one place this way and one place is another, where seemingly, just visually you wouldn't have any notice of that. So that's an upcoming book. But some of my books deal with getting in touch with, your inner life to make it better and more blessed. We can all use an extra blessing. I'm a doubly ordained minister, non-denominational. And people also find that strange.
No, I love that. I think it's really good that you're ordained because you can give an extra insight to a lot of spiritual questions that people have.
And that's what made me actually go forward with it, because I had so many questions. I still have so many questions. I hope we, never run out of them because, that makes life interesting. But I really, wanted to find out deeper meanings and the history of different things. And when when you lay them all over each other, the best thing I've found is that we are more alike than different, no matter how different people think we are. If you would just kind of sit in peace with each other and realize that the stories, of different religions, they could overlap. It's just different names are used, slightly different ways that the story is told, but it's the same story.
Very much
So
so. And I like
I
what
just
you
thought that
wrote
was interesting.
in one of your books that I have here. I'm going to hold it up. It's a field guide to the other side,
Yeah.
Things of Out of This World by Teal Gray. And I'm just going to hold it up here. It's a big one, but
It is a big.
it is. But I really love a lot of stuff in this book. Now you've got, especially the intro here. In your lifetime, there are going to be encounters you can't explain, and that doesn't make them any less real. And how true is that, Teal?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I wanted people to just really start to step into their own power and not feel like, ooh, I shouldn't say anything about what I saw or what I experienced. I mean, that's something, of course, everybody goes through and feels, and I have too, but it's not a good feeling. And I think at this time in the world, in this day and age, you need to step into your own power for just your personal life, but also your experiences. And I don't think there should be any more boxes other than if you're packing to move. I just think, you can be a Christian and believe in ghosts and go on ghost hunts and wonder what's going on the other side. It's actually not even against the Bible. It doesn't say anywhere in there, don't you go checking out what's on the other side. In fact, it's the most supernatural book you'll ever read. Even
That is
Jesus
very
appears
true.
in the boat and he's like, don't be afraid. Look at me, touch me, feel me. I'm solid. I'm not a ghost. And it's done in such a casual manner when it's spoken about, because in that day and time, they were more in tune with their own lives and the earth and the natural elements and the realms around them. They didn't censor like now, like, oh, I'm really interested in this, but I don't want to get kicked out of my group or made fun of at work, so I'll just be quiet about this here, but then I'll have this whole other life there. I just don't. I think it's ridiculous. Just be who you are, and anybody that's
you, right?
judging you actually is going against the Bible. One of the rules: don't judge. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just be you and do you.
Yeah.
And it's great that you mentioned that, because there's so many people here, especially where I live and also around the world, in small places, maybe little islands, who are afraid to come out and say their experiences or talk about it, because they think, oh, it's taboo, or oh, that's witchcraft, or oh, that's a cult, or
Yeah.
it's okay to talk about spirituality. And you talked a little bit about protections. And again, you mentioned humans, we sought safety and strength in every area of our lives for thousands of years with symbolism and amulets.
Yeah.
It's just in our DNA to be safe from harm and want to know and have protection and things like that. And, you talk about other things like, for example, amulets. People have carried those for thousands of years with them.
Yeah.
And, today people wear things like crosses or get tattoo crosses and things like that.
It's something tangible. It's something you can touch, something you can see. Everybody learns differently, whether you're an auditory learner or a visual learner, or, everybody takes in the world and everything around them differently. And I think throughout time, amulets, charms, jewelry, tattoos, whatever, it is something that shows not only your belief outwardly, but also something that you can feel like is part of you and is there with you, helping you protected from harm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I really love, how you mentioned or give an example of using an opening prayer and a closing prayer to for investigators to use, and
Yeah.
calling in, for example, Archangel Michael, or
Mhm.
yeah. I mean that's really
And just only thing I would say is be specific and call in the good angels, because my first book, Shades of Angels, was actually written because so many places I would travel and they would be like, gosh, Teal, we're opening ourselves up to the angels, but woo, that's a mixed bag of tricks. And I was
yeah.
like,
I
is
was
it
just
really?
gonna say, like when you open up to the angels, you have to be specific, like you said,
Very specific.
because
There's as
there's
many dark
angels.
as there are light.
That's right. Yeah. So you had to make sure you call in the right ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you also know, like you said, how to close it if they open things. There's so many people who open veils and don't know how to close them, or maybe bring in the wrong thing.
Yeah.
There's, several other different prayers that you'd mentioned, like the 23rd Psalm or St. Christopher's Prayer for Travelers. And, you know, and yeah, protection is definitely crucial for sure.
And the 91st Psalm is great just for all over courage against anything, just even in your life. It really kind of works a little miracle. There's so many people that said, I didn't put that much stock in the 91st Psalm the way other people did or the way you do. But then I started saying it, and there's a saying, I don't know if it's true or not, let's call it an urban legend, but that if you say it 7 times, it really starts to set in and have this certain power. So when you do it on a repeated basis, even if not daily, just more than normal, a few times a week or something, people really have found that it made a difference in whether it's just in their psyche that they believe they're being protected, and it sinks into the subconscious, which is wonderful because we've got this little computer going on in our head, and it's mostly negative things people have said or done to us in our life. So if we can add some positivity and protection in there and fight against some of this other stuff that keeps playing again, that's good even in itself.
Yeah, that's definitely key. Keeping a positive attitude, because it
Yeah.
seems like depression and anxiety, it seems like that's where all the negative things like to hang out. So
Sure.
this kind of stuff, keeping it light and happy really kind of helps. And we talk a little bit, you go into cleansing, and I don't know if you want to give the story about the mobile phone, the growl.
I'm sorry, the what?
Or if you want to tell your story about the mobile phone that growled.
Oh my goodness, that was so crazy. There is a house. They asked me to write a book about Haunted Hill House in Mineral Wells. It's one of the most haunted houses in America. And it is properly haunted. It actually does. I don't use the word demon lightly. In fact, I have come across them a handful of times, and that place is one of them.
Well, last night I had a team on who I said, okay, you're in Texas. Where would you recommend? That place came up.
Yes, it happens. There is activity day and night and all over the place. It's not just one certain thing. It is a mix of horror all over the place. People who have a lot of bravado when they come in run out screaming, so it is a great place so to investigate and really see different types of phenomenon that are going on. It's amazing, but I always protect myself when I leave there. In fact, they have a sign. I make my own products, but you can use anything, holy water, salts. I use sacred oils in mine from my travels and different things. But the main thing, they have a sign now that's like, you can't use Teal's products if you're entering the house, because they work very well. And in fact, people had used it and going in, and then they didn't have any activity for like over a week or 3 weeks. It was a long time. And so they're like, nope. So we can't do that. You can protect yourself as soon as you leave, but not going in. So
yeah, you mentioned there's different things you can put in there, like the oils like sage and eucalyptus and basil, lavender, clove, rosemary.
And rose. And I grow all my own stuff and bless it and mix it with lots and lots of salt from all over the world. world and holy water. But the main thing is, the intention of being blessed. But we left there in a really big hurry, myself and a team member, Jamie Mose, and we were going somewhere, and we were in her car, and we were about to do our blessing, and she realized, oh gosh, I'm going to be late for my next event. So we jump in the car. We're just barely down the road, and we start hearing this growling sound, and we're like, what is going on? And then we think, is it her brakes grinding? Like, what's going on? No. And we check everything out. It's coming from our phones, which are turned, they're not on. And we turn them on. We opened up, and it's really growling in our phones. We're like, what the heck? And we both have this instant recognition of, that is the demon Toby from Haunted Hill House in Mineral Wells. And it's owned by Kathy and Sonny Estes, who are great friends. But he was right there, I guess, wanting to take a little road trip. And so we had to eventually pull over. And it was just happenstance that she pulled into here. She didn't mean to, but she pulled into a church. And so at the church, we went and opened up the back, got the spray out, and sprayed us, our phones, the car, everything, because, we normally would have cleansed our equipment and ourselves and our car, everything, and it stopped immediately. Boop, it was gone. He was back where he needed to be at Haunted Hill House. Well, but that was just a really big reminder that anything can be attached to you and you wouldn't know it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you can tell it, okay, you're not allowed in my body. You have to stay here. You're not allowed in my home, my house, my car, my animals, blah, blah, blah. But like you said, you don't know that. And there's so many people who don't even think about the car. And you mentioned take off your clothes that you had on.
Yeah, and the shoes, like at least, I'm not saying you have to drench everything, but if, the reason I have my product that is, I do dry, I have sage bundles and sticks too, but some people are allergic to that. So they are like, oh, I don't cleanse because I'm allergic to the smoke.
Right.
You can use this liquid
vinegar, right?
So that you could use the spray, you don't have to use the smoke. So, it's a good thing to have, but you got to think, like, if you're walking through a graveyard among everything, and then you go to your house, you just brought everything in. It's like a little sticky ick, so you just have to be able to say, no, this is not happening.
And, honestly, I never thought about cleansing my equipment before. You think about yourself, but you don't think about
because you'll actually contaminate your investigations, because you're taking what you just left and taking it right into something else. And so maybe there wasn't a dark entity there before. Maybe that was something else, and yet now it's in this space. And so you could be causing more trouble for something that was never negative,
Okay, yeah, because there are a lot of people who go to, to different places and don't think about stuff. Now, we had talked about amulets and crystals and stones, but I know you'd mentioned some of the ones like rubies, onyx, the beryl, diamonds, gold, garnets, and jade, of course, are one of the really good ones that you can also put in the mixture, right?
Sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, I do that too. And sometimes I will do all the different ones that correspond with the chakras in the body. Yes. And that's a really nice thing because it keeps you balanced, as you're using this spray. It's not only cleansing and purifying your space or your equipment or anything else, but it's also bringing this balance, this real centered balance that we all love to be in. And it's just like resetting your energy.
Now, one thing that Mark said that I really liked, he said, of course, everything is about intention. Yeah. So, you have to say what your intention is, right? Mm-hmm. So you can't just do something and you can't have somebody else do it. To my understanding, you have to do it because of you.
Yeah, it's your energy. You're moving that energy. Now, you can have positive energetic thought towards somebody and send them positive vibrations, positive energy. But again, he's right. It's all intention and it's all energy.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we talk a little bit about, how thin the veil is, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different talk, and I guess theology and I guess philosophy goes hand in hand with religion when you talk about the veils and what is it? Is it a parallel universe? Is it like what is it? And is there something to the witching hour? At some people say it's 12 o'clock, other people say it's 3 o'clock. Like what are your thoughts?
Well, I've got to tell you, I do believe there's certain times, but my worst, scariest encounters have all been right in the middle of the afternoon on a bright, sunshiny day. Like
Right?
it is, yeah, it's like, but craziness. And I
If
will
it
say
was
some of the
haunted,
worst were 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I don't know if the
yeah.
three was just offset by,
Oh,
what time of day. But yeah, no, during the day has been really, really, really scary.
yeah, they say, I mean, if a place is haunted, it's haunted. It don't matter what
That's
time
right.
of the day it is, right?
That's right.
They'll come and talk to you, especially if they're intelligent. They'll come and interact with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you want to say about intelligent hauntings, or
Well,
have
I
you
will say I
experienced?
was in, it was over 650-year-old house in York, England that I rented. And it was a beautiful place. I just love the history of it. It was surrounded by the remains of an old Roman wall
Wow.
and huge gate. I still can remember the weight of that key, that I had to use to get into the gate to enter into the property. And I tell you, that was the first time that sort of everything that could happen in a B movie, you see this stuff and you're like, oh, come on, that's a little too much. Happened to me. So I'm so tired of eating crow feathers. But there was tapping on the windows, rapping on the windows from the very first night. Nobody there. And in fact, I was on the second floor up, but the way this was built, there weren't any ways to shimmy up. There was nobody out there. There was no way you could be on the second floor or the third floor. There just wasn't the way this place was built.
Right.
So there was a rapping on the windows, and I always try to ignore things, just ignore it. My covers I was like, come on, because they tugged, and then completely went flying across the room. You couldn't ignore that, right? And because at first I just pulled it right back up and pulled it right back up. And then they were like, oh no, we're trying to get your attention. And then shoop. And I was like, wow, that I never had that happen before.
And
And
you were there by yourself, too?
well, I had other people on the third floor and on the first floor, but I was the only one on the second floor.
Oh, wow.
And so I was in there by myself. And what I didn't realize until the end, and Mark loves this because it involved him, I wouldn't talk to him. And so they started bothering Mark because we're best friends and real connected. And so they started bothering him. And but before that, there was the worst flood they'd had in York in like 25 years that happened. And while we were there, and luckily we were up enough on a hill, we were fine. But the town was having to, shut everything down, and everything was closing because the floodwaters were rising. So everybody else in my group they were all scurrying off I stayed there to cook and get some stuff ready.
Right.
And they were all trying to get to banks, get to the grocery stores, get anywhere they possibly could to get things sorted out, because we just didn't know what to expect, especially being in a different country. And everything worked out fine. However, while they were gone, I thought somebody had broken into the house, and because I heard these heavy, heavy boots upstairs, like boom, boom, clomping around, walking. I was like, oh my gosh, somebody broke in. Because I'm more scientifically minded. My first thought is not it's Aunt Tilly. My first thought is somebody broke in, or it's a raccoon, or it's something.
Try to rule it out. Yeah.
Yeah, rule it out. Because
yeah.
actually, where people get frustrated with me and they're like, Teal, why can't you just let it be haunted? And I was like, well, it can be haunted, but I would like to rule everything out, because actually that's better. The 1% that you can't explain, now that will keep you up at night. That's the real deal, So I didn't want to, but I was like, take a breath. Come on, you're from Texas. Let's go. And I went upstairs and I looked, I opened the door quickly thinking I was going to surprise somebody. There was nobody there. I thought, oh, well, they heard me. They heard me coming up. They're hiding. They're in a closet or they're under the bed. And I was like, great, I have to look under the bed. But there was nothing. I looked everywhere. I even looked in an old trunk, just like, could they fold up in a trunk? And there was nothing, nobody there. And so I was like, okay. And I shut the door and I got about 3 steps down the stairwell and it started sounding like it was coming down, walking towards me. And so I went into my room on the 2nd floor and I got my keys and my bag. And I was like, this just doesn't make sense. And I'm going to go check everything else, but I'm not going to leave myself either locked out or locked in. So I got my stuff. And at that same time, I said, if you're just trying to talk to me, if you're just trying to get my attention, then do it. Let's go. What do you want to say? I was all bravado at that point. Then the phone rings, the rotary phone, which is unplugged and not working due to the flood, rings. And I'm stupid enough to answer it. I didn't think about it being unplugged. I didn't think about the flood. I just was, so I answered it. And it was just like a flood of voices. It was like, and I was like, nope. And so I hung the phone up. I had just told them, if you want to talk to me, do it. So they even rang the phone, right? And I was like, nope. So I opened my door. And about that time, it sounded like heavy boots running down the stairs at me, but there was nobody there. So I didn't run, because you never run, but I did power walk. I was like zipping on down those stairs to the 1st floor. And I checked everything and it was weird. Like even as I was going, there was nothing unlocked. There was nobody had broken in, even though I could see there was nobody there. My mind kept wanting it to make sense, Right. And so I go outside and it was about the time of year when it starts to get dark really early over there. And like around 3:30, 3:45, it starts getting really dark. And so that's odd anyway. But it set the mood for a very weird encounter. And Mark calls me and says, what is going on? I feel like these spirits are contacting me. And they're wanting to talk to you. And I said, oh, yes, they are. And I told him this story. And but they kept bothering him. What I didn't know until I was back and he was looking through photos that I took just randomly of the house, how beautiful. There was a round Ouija board that was on an end table right at the head of my bed. And I never noticed it. I didn't look around. I just, so all this time there was this device they were, I guess, trying to get my attention to use, and I didn't. And I don't use Ouija boards. That's just one of my, I was messing with those.
Say that. Yeah. I'm not a fan either.
No, I just think, nobody can definitively say where it came from. And too many stories of when people have messed with them and it goes very, very south and it doesn't stop going south. So right. I just don't. But I do know, some people safely use them. They open them and they close them properly. So that's up to everybody's taste. It's just not mine. Right. But I'm not. I don't have a judgment against people using them. I just don't. But they kept bothering Mark to create these round boards. And he just kept having these dreams and these impressions and this contact. And he did create, some boards and in the round. And they were very, very talkative. They worked very well. So, and only when he finished doing what they wanted did it stop.
What did they say or want? Do you remember?
They just wanted to contact me and I guess through different lifetimes, we had interacted and they knew that I could, as a psychic medium, that they were trying to just tell their stories and be in contact. I just was there for vacation. I wasn't into that. I just was like, nope, this is, nope. And they just kept saying yes, but we didn't. So they bothered Mark.
Isn't it interesting though, how when you go into a building it seems like spirit knows who the medium is and just gravitates towards them.
Yeah, and I
Like
would too. I mean, you
Mhm.
would too. If you're on the
Yeah,
other side and you're like, I want to get a message, or I just want
yeah,
people to know I still exist, we would do the same thing.
yeah. Because I like when you were saying earlier about investigating. I mean, I don't find the whole residual thing scary at all, right? But then when you get into the weirdness, like I don't know, poltergeist or parasitic entities or shadow people and doppelgangers, that's a whole bit of weirdness itself,
The
right?
whole other animal.
Have
Yeah.
you experienced any of that yourself, or?
Yeah. Gosh, unfortunately, so much of it. There was a doppelganger that people kept seeing, when I was like a senior in high school and then just graduated. And they would see it look just like me, so much so that people would say, "Gosh, I saw you, but you weren't with your boyfriend," or "I thought you weren't supposed to be out that late," or whatever, and they would tell like either my parents or my boyfriend, and there would be a problem about it, and you couldn't explain yourself, like, "I wasn't there, but all these people saw you," and I don't know. It was so strange. But one time around that same, point in time, I was driving over a bridge here that connects Dallas to Louisville in Texas. And I spotted my own car in what looked like me.
Really?
And so I've heard of the people, of course, but not
Right.
a vehicle. And I thought, that's very weird. And so I kept trying to catch up to it. And I would just almost make it. And then it would just, something else would happen. I never got face to face with it, which people have told me is a good thing because you don't
Right.
want to meet your doppelganger face to
No.
face. Apparently, that's a dreaded bad thing. So,
Right. Yeah, that's like one of those things about, Back to the Future kind of thing, right?
right. So
So
that didn't happen, but yeah.
yeah, we don't want that kind of thing to happen. And
Yeah.
then, there's the theories about, well, are the spirits just trapped between both worlds? Is it like some, movies that you see where people go to the underworld and they're just stuck down there, or they're stuck somewhere else because they want to talk to somebody and they want to just say what it is, what happened, or tell somebody
Yeah, I think
something.
it's complicated. I think that there is, there's people that stay kind of trapped in their own mind. We do that here, right? Even when we're alive, we kind of stay stuck with things that happen to us or, negative things. And we stay a little bit in that no matter how great things are going, something can just make us poop, rabbit trail right back to something negative, and it can send you into a little bit of a depression. And I think there's some people that have depression and sometimes to an extreme state,
Mhm.
and sometimes there's some mental illness, at different times. And I think when they pass in their spirit, if they haven't, sort of reconciled that or dealt with that, they are still getting these moments of where they're just so withdrawn into themselves, they don't even know how to move forward in life, and they don't always know how to move forward in death. And so I think, but there's a lot of healing that goes on the other side, and people, even if they are in that, there's always, good spirits that are trying to heal them and move them forward. So I think sometimes there's people that are stuck in a sequence the same way they were kind of stuck in life, but they're not really stuck, and a lot of times I think they do move forward.
Yeah.
Because you hear so many situations on the other side where people are surprised that, I was so upstanding and I didn't do this or that because I didn't want to do the wrong thing. And then up here, there's people who didn't do a darn thing, right. They just did their own thing, or they did horrible things, and they're up here just as celebrated as anybody else. And I think that's really true. I think it's all like, because even biblically, God, Jesus, they don't remember your sins. It's supposed to be as far as east to west. So they wouldn't all of a sudden remember them there. You know what I mean? And
Right,
and
right.
sometimes negative things happen to help us grow, to help us, achieve something. There's been some people I thought, gosh, if that was what they were supposed to do, if they were my lesson, boy, they did a really great lesson because they were terrible to me, but
Right. But then you have the different theories about, as in, life as in death, where if somebody's mean and cranky in their life, they're gonna be the same way
yeah,
in
they're like
death.
that. They're like that. They
Mhm.
carry on that personality.
And then of course a lot of people think that, okay, let's say somebody passes who has Alzheimer's, and then some people theorize that, on the other side there is none of that. You get all your memory back, and
You get all your memory and your faculties. You kind of go, it seems like people go to whatever their best age was. If they passed young, then of course they're going to stay, somewhat like that. But a lot of people, even if they're elderly, they kind of go back to like 30 years old, like whatever stage they visually thought they looked great, could be 50, it could be whatever. But they don't hurt anymore. If there was somebody in great pain, they don't hurt. They aren't repressed or depressed. They also understand things they did before, and so relationships that were difficult, they can understand that and release that from themselves, even if they couldn't do that in life. And they just kind of healed.
Yeah, I like that. I like thinking about that. Now, another thing that I really love about this book, I'm going to hold this up for paranormal investigators. This, I don't know if you can really see, I'm going to hold it a little bit closer. There's a section here, and I'll just say it out loud. You can use it for when you do your paranormal investigations. There's date, time, location, weather, investigators, history of the sightings, encounters, things I felt, heard, or saw, notes for next time, equipment used, what was the best evidence in my ranking of this investigation. And I've actually already started using it. I mean,
that's exciting.
Great. Yeah, you can go back after your investigation, and if you go back to the same site again, you can go back to the notes. It's very helpful.
I'm so glad you like it. And that's why I made it a big book instead of a smaller book. Everybody's like, well, if it was smaller, I could tuck it in. And I was like, yeah, but if it's smaller, you'd have 2 lines to write on. I wanted to make it to where you could really make it useful, really have your notes folded over and be able to use it, So people forget, you think, I'm not going to forget that. But you have enough things happen and you do get a little fuzzy on like, well, I remember it, but what was it? How cold was it? Would that have affected any of my equipment? Did it get damp? Did it get that? There's just a lot of little details that you remember in broad strokes, but maybe don't remember down the line.
But here's what I love about you. You just don't stick to ghosts. And you also talk about cryptids. I'm the same way. Like when people say paranormal, to me, it's everything. It's the whole gamut. It's not just ghosts. Right. Well, no, it's also, it could be UFO. It could be unexplained. It could be cryptid creature. It could be, a sacred sites that you have in here. So, to me, the word paranormal is not just one thing.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because that's exactly how I think, and that's why I did the book that way. It's done with some of my personal experiences and thoughts in each section, but I kept it really short and brief so that you just had like a good, section of pages you could write in, and, some examples to get you started and some different things. But it's really about your experiences. Whoever's got the book, it's really about them. And so I made it less about me, a little less Teal, and a little more who's using it. Glad you're enjoying it.
Well, I'm going to shamelessly plug you some more. Haunted Denton in Texas, for people who don't know where Denton is. And I love that you've got pictures of the places in there and the experiences. Did you want to maybe tell one thing about, maybe it doesn't have to be this book, it could be another book. She's got a lot of books. Haunted Weatherford just came out. You got the advanced copy there. It just came out yesterday. So Haunted Denton, Haunted Denton came out in March of 22, and it's still on the bestseller list. So thank you for that, everybody. Congratulations.
And Haunted Weatherford just released yesterday. So hope you enjoy that too. I really like to put the history, not just some shocking story, believe me, I'll put a shocking story in if it's there, but I don't, I'm not sort of a shock jock in that sense, even on my podcasting, different things. I want to know the deeper story. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes with the people or the place.
You even take your own photos.
I do. Yeah, I do. And I take all my photos because I think, it makes it all tie in, especially, I feel like whatever my eye is drawn to capture for you is building on that story that I'm telling you, but gives you a visual feel to kind of put yourself in that place is my hope.
Right. And I love that. I mean, the bridge stories. I haven't, I mean, I lived in Texas, but
Yeah.
I haven't been to the bridge. There's, and yep, you were there. You took the picture. There's
Oh
the,
yeah, for Goatman's Bridge. Yeah, that's a really interesting place. There's a lot of history with that. And people see and hear crazy things on that bridge and in the woods nearby, and they have for decades. Um, one story that's tied to that is telling a ghost story to a ghost. And I was visiting a friend who just lived, I mean, maybe a mile from there, very
oh,
close. And so they were telling me, sometimes you had weird things happen, and they wonder if it has to do with the bridge. And I was like, what weird things? And they were like, well, even like we have this situation with a watch that belonged, to a family member, and it stopped right at their death, and then it started to move again. And then we wondered, like, it only did that when we were outside with it so close to the bridge. And is there something magnetic or magical or something about this bridge? And I thought, that's really interesting. And they said, we'll go get the watch. So in the time they go get the watch, I'm standing out on the porch by myself. And it's out a little bit. At the time, it was more country and quiet. And I see this good-looking young man standing under the street light, just at the end of the yard. And it's a street, but they didn't have a fence against their place, so it was just open from the street light to the yard. And he nodded, I nodded, and then I looked down to grab something or get a drink or whatever. I look back up. He is all of a sudden, I'm like, how the heck did he get there that quick? He's right there right in front of me. He's right there, and at the outside of the porch. And I was like, oh,
I remember this part of the book. Yeah, I was thinking, oh, that's spooky.
It was spooky. And I was like, oh, wow, God, I don't even know how you made it that fast. And when I'm nervous, I just keep talking, and I talk more, and I talk faster, and I talk. So I'm just talking away. He's not answering, but he's just looking at me, but not menacing, but he's just staring at me, maybe partially surprised that I could see him. I thought he was real when I was having this conversation. I thought he was 100% living person, and he was not. So I'm telling her, oh gosh, you came from right there. The only thing that's back that way is the bridge. Did you see anything or feel anything at the bridge? It's such it's such an odd place. And I'm just chattering on about it. And so I said, do you live around here, or what brings you out here? It's pretty late. And all of a sudden my friend's like, who are you talking to? She comes out, and I was like, oh, there's this guy. Of course, he'd vanished, right? He wasn't there. And she's like, what guy? And I said, well, he was under the street right over there. And then it seemed instantly he was right in front of me on the, he never came on the porch. He stayed outside. But, and so I was nervously chattering to him. And then here you are. And she was like, what did he look like? And I told her, the description. And she's like, say that again. And so I gave her a description, and she's like,
you freaked her out.
I did freak her out. And she's like, there is a guy that lived a couple of spots over, and he was killed. He was hit by a car right by that street sign, but that street light. And that's just happened, just I think it was a few days ago. And so she was like, that was what he was wearing when he died. I mean, because they have the description of the guy, and that was his favorite jacket or whatever. So it was something that people had seen him in, and that was what he looked like. So I feel like I was telling a ghost story to a ghost.
That's an amazing story, especially in and around that area. So
yeah,
spooky area. And Texas itself has such a deep, rich history. I recently had another crew on, and they were down by the Alamo, and they
Oh,
had
yeah.
a lot of senses and things down there. And I remember when I was there, I mean, you just look and you can see the bullet holes. Like,
Oh
you just
gosh, it's a great, if anybody does get a chance to go down there, it really is great. Just, you don't, here's the thing that I talk about in my books and other things. I feel like everything can kind of be a shared experience with friends and family. You don't all have to be into the paranormal, and you don't all have to be into history. You can, and you don't all have to be just into travel, but it can all
right,
come together. Some people
right.
just love to travel and have some great food. They're foodies. So you could go to, like, let's just say you go to the Alamo. Well, some people are going for the history. Some want
Mhm.
to see if they can pick up something paranormal. And some just say that's the best Tex-Mex down there ever. So I think you can all kind of find a little bit of joy and happiness and share these things. It doesn't have to be all one thing,
That's right. Texas is a great place. I really love living there. Miss it very much. And
Yeah.
I'm shamelessly going to promote Flanker Press. They're from Newfoundland Labrador Press over here. And I'm also going to hold up. You may know. Do you know Dr. Judd Burton? He's also ordained, and he
I
did
don't.
one called Paranormal Big Country. I don't know if you heard of that
Oh,
one. Yeah,
no.
yeah. And this more around like Merkel area in
Yeah,
Texas.
sounds interesting. I'll have to check it
Yeah,
out.
but Texas has so many different things. I mean, and you've got a lot of other
Yeah.
stuff. Let's talk about your other books. You've got a lot of stuff that you're doing.
Oh, I just can't quit talking, can I? Like, it's just, I just am such a curious cat, and I love to share that with everybody. I think with Texas, like you said, I have a series coming out called Superstitious Texas, and because
Love it.
I think it's just a melting pot of, we have so many cultures here and so many blends of people and their history and context from where they came from, and they bring their superstitions and their beliefs and their ghost stories, and we all share them together with great food and some spooky spots. But yeah,
Well, it makes me think of Stevie Ray Vaughan, Superstitious. He's got
listen,
right?
I can tell you a story I haven't told on air before because it's a little personal if you want. Um, there was a friend of mine that sadly was murdered in their
Oh,
home,
I'm sorry.
and about 20 minutes from where I live. And gosh, they were just such a
I'm
sweet
sorry.
person. It was crazy. And the house was going to be sold, and immediately, because it was some kind of a weird way that it was financed or something, and so it was just going to be kind of quick, something quick. And so um my one of my daughters was like, well, that's right, the area I want to move in. I was like, are you crazy? You knew them too. And she's like, but I know, I love that they were such a sweet person. They would never be anything wrong with that house. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't think it would be from them, but I just think the energy. I was like, I think it's a terrible
Right,
idea. Well, there
right.
was no electricity because everything had been turned off. There was no electricity, no water, no nothing. And so um friends of hers that were friends of mine, lived next door to her, said, well, we can take you over. We'll have to use flashlights. And so my daughter and I go over there, and I'm just like, this is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. And I didn't really want to go in there because I just, I stayed shut down. I didn't want to, it was just a lot. It hadn't been that long. And so we go in there, and of course they had cleaned it up, but they had not cleaned everything. So there was still blood, some blood on the walls here and there. There was still blood because
Wow.
it was like a big fight. It went on room after room,
Oh
and
my
some blood on
gosh.
the
Are you
carpet.
serious?
And so as we're leaving, I'm like,
Wow.
it was an absolutely gorgeous, they were a beautiful homemaker. But they were trans, and as soon as the sheriffs and everything, they were on it. But it seemed to me, maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to me as soon as they realized this person was trans, it just sort of like stopped. Like, oh, well, because they were kind of a good old boys
Oh,
thing. And I just
mhm.
thought, oh, surely not. But I got to say, as far as I know, still to this day, nobody's been found. The murderer's never been found.
Good.
And and there weren't a lot of leads. There weren't really any. And for such a close community. Like nobody heard or saw things. Even the next door neighbors who were really close, they didn't hear a thing. So that's disconcerting too, because you think, man, nobody can even hear, in your own house. So anyway, as soon as we leave there, she's like, I think you're right. It's such a beautiful home, but I would always just be missing them. And it would I think it's a bad idea. And I said, I told you it was a bad idea. So we got in the car. It starts to rain. It's dark. It's nighttime. It starts to rain. I turn on the car, not thinking about the radio already being on, which kind of startles me a little bit. And it is playing loudly, very superstitious, the writings on the wall, and I was like, oh my gosh, how
Wow.
appropriate, and how, it certainly was. There was blood on the wall. But that was just a weird, I know everything's coincidence to some people, but that was a really strange one.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
And you would think I mean, I'm not a private investigator, but you'd think there'd be a lot of, evidence with the crime scene by the sounds of it, but
It was terrible. Yeah.
wow.
Never solved.
I'm so sorry, Teal. Thank you for sharing that.
No.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears and talk a little bit more about how people can find you on social media and if they want to follow you or other places
Sure.
where they can
If you go
find
on
you.
Facebook, you can look up Teal Gray Books, TEALGRAY Books, BOOKS. And I have a Facebook page for that. And it's on, you have the link tree.
Yes.
So that you're going to put up.
Yes, I'm going to put that in the description so everybody can
Yeah. And so they can hit that link tree. I'm also on Instagram, Teal Gray Books. And you'll also see Superstitious Texas, that kind of thing. But you can follow me on either one, whatever you would like.
Teal, I really appreciate you coming on today. It was a big eye opener. I mean, we could talk for hours, I'm sure, about a lot of different topics.
I know. You were so fun to talk to.
I really appreciate you coming on. It was a really good conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, and for everybody listening, follow Teal Gray. You'll love her. I'll put the link tree up and follow her on her socials. And stay spooky, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.